Our sign language interpreter is Meresha Awiti. Fear, outrage and grief have gripped Paris, France and the entire European Union. France is under a state of emergency after a series of deadly terrorist attacks inflicted carnage and chaos at popular spots across the capital Friday night, leaving 128 dead and over 200 injured. World leaders have rallied behind France and pledged to work together against terror as ISIS claimed responsibility for the Paris attacks. KTN Samogina reports.
Outside the European Union headquarters in Berlin, Germany flew half-mast to mourn victims of the Paris terror attacks. It is an onslaught that has shocked the world, with French President François Hollande declaring 3 days of mourning. France is in a state of emergency, reintroduced border patrols as well as closed its borders. A state of emergency will be proclaimed, which means that certain public places will be closed, traffic can be stopped and searches ordered throughout the greater Paris region. The Islamic State terror organization ISIS has claimed responsibility for the worst violence witnessed in France since World War II, a volley of nearly simultaneous terror attacks that the French president has called an act of war. The assailants targeted 6 sites Friday night in Paris, the deadliest being a massacre at a concert hall where at least 80 people were killed. An American band known as the Eagles of Death metal rock band was playing at the fully booked venue. The attackers systematically attacked restaurants, Stade de France, where a football-friendly match between France and Germany attended by the French president François Hollande was going on, and the Bataclan club where a rock concert was happening. At least 80 revelers were killed at the club. World leaders have jointly condemned the attacks, standing in solidarity with the French government. From the Queen of England, the Pope at the Vatican, to President Uhuru Kenyatta, the leaders have described the terror attacks as an attack on all humanity.
This is a heartbreaking situation, and obviously those of us here in the United States know what it's like. We've gone through these kinds of episodes ourselves, and whenever these kinds of attacks happened, we've always been able to count on the French people to stand with us. They have been an extraordinary counterterrorism partner, and we intend to be there with them in that same fashion.
Shocked but resolute, in sorrow but unbowed. My message to the French people is simple. Nous sommes solidaires avec vous. Nous sommes tous ensemble. We stand with you, united.
President Uhuru Kenyatta in a statement condemned the attack, saying these enemies of humanity reject the value that one's liberty should never be a right to harm others. They reject democratic constitutions and the equality of all, regardless of their faith in the rule of law, opting instead for a perversion of faith and attempt to justify the murder of innocents. They repudiate the embrace of diverse beliefs and cultures in a common humanity, preferring narrow, intolerant and hateful identities.
Sisi kama Wakenya lazima tuendelee kuwa vigilant, kwa sababu watu hawa bado wako ndani yetu. Lazima tuendelee kusaidiana na maofisa wa usalama.
French authorities have put the death toll of the Friday night attacks at 128 fatalities, 99 in critical condition, while over 200 wounded. The attackers ruthlessly sought out soft targets where people were getting their weekend underway. A busy concert venue, restaurants and bars, a French national stadium where an international soccer game was being played. France President François Hollande has promised France will be ruthless in its response as questions arise if ISIS is moving into the realm of international terrorism. The attackers brought together world leaders who previously were finding it hard to agree on a strategy to fight the Islamic State terror group. Following the attacks, world leaders are already predicting a radical shift in the direction of the talks going on about ISIS and the war in Syria. Samuel, KTN News.
As Samogina pointed out right at the end there, this will have global implications, especially in the fight against ISIS, as well as local implications here likely. And to discuss that with us, we'll have Andrew Franklin, a security analyst, joining us from our I&M studios in a few moments. But first, let's move on with the news agenda for a little bit, though. President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy, William Ruto, will contest the presidency in the coming election under the Jubilee Party. This follows a decision decision reached by the Jubilee allied legislators to dissolve the 12 parties in the coalition to form a new party, which will officially be launched on December the 19th. Meru Senator Kiraito Murungi said the National Steering Committee will in 2 weeks unveil the colors, logo and slogan of the new party. The leaders of the dissolved parties, including TNA and URP, say the Jubilee Party will be poised to unite the country behind the Uhuru Ruto manifestos come 2017 and beyond.
And strongly based on the counties moving ahead to unite every Kenyan from wherever they may be under the banner of Jubilee. I'd like to assure all our party members from all the parties that there is space for them in Jubilee. All our officials from the national to the county level need to know that this party is for all of us. Till later that we're going to announce of how, as we move to the next election, we're going to have an election that is about issues and an election that is not filled with blatant lies, untruths, and incitement of community against community.
Let's move away from security and politics for a little levity now, depending on how you look at this story. Now, the following story is about survival. Well, let's say survival skills for those who want to avoid trouble with the Kenyan law. Kenyans on the Kenya-Uganda border at the Busia point have been crossing over to Uganda to have themselves a sip of a brew known as marua. Here in Kenya, it's illegal to take alcohol before drinking hours, but in Uganda, there are no such binding laws.
As maize Busia in Uganda. These structures are common in this village. However, the number of visitors coming in almost every minute is what has made the village famous among Ugandans and more so Kenyans at the Kenya-Uganda border. Florence Amonge owns most of the structures here, which happen to be drinking bins for a local brew known as marua. This time she was serving her customers in waiting. This brew spent a whole week in store, after which they say kameiva, to mean it is ready. But one key feature in her business is that Kenyans form her largest section of customers. The Kenyans here say that marua is sweeter than the Kenyan brew known as changa, which is believed to be hazardous to health.
Kwa pombe Uganda hapa. Ndio wanaona watu ya Kenya mingi na kunya hapa. Halafu narudia kama kusakunya.
Hata usipokula au nakunywa tu na shibe na inafanya kazi zako.
With less than 100 shillings, you are good to go. Drink to your capacity. One reason for the love of this brew. But what attracts most Kenyans to this brew on the Ugandan side is the strong stand of the famous national campaign against drug and alcohol abuse, Chief John Mutudho. The so-called Mutudho laws have strictly controlled drinking hours in Kenya.
Ukienda mahali pengine ukae na wale watu wa pombe kama Kenya hapa, ni rahisi sana ukamatwe na polisi. Lakini pale Uganda iko free. Kila mtu anaweza kunywa vile anataka. Hapa Kenya wanataka tu 6 jioni peke yake, kutoka 6 ukiendelea ndio kunywa pombe, ndio sababu.
It is a prison break for the Kenyans crossing to this side of Uganda to settle a date with marua.
Sauri hapa kuna mnyanyasua mtu kukunya pombe. Kila mtu iko free. Hata kama polisi anapita hapa naangalia tu watu wanakuja. Hata polisi wengine anakuja na join hao wanakunya naye pamoja. Hata jeshi na join hao wanakunya pamoja. Hata ofisa hizo yote.
Hata huko pombe Kenya hapana. Ndio naona wanakuja huko wakakunywa huko. Huko hata tupita tu kama huko mlevi, askari akunyushe pombe, wewe pesa. Hapa huko na freedom.
The Kenyans in these drinking dens also claim marua is a uniting factor. They sit in circles, each with a straw, and the beer pot is a uniting factor. After you have had enough, on your way you go, and peace be with you.
Hata unaweza kama mtu mwenye ujui chochote, lakini kwa siku mbili, hakuna siku ya kwanza, siku ya pili, ni mgeni yako na rafiki yako hapa ni ndugu yako.
Nicholas Mboa from Busia, Officers Maze, Uganda.
Well, I guess to each his own, but it certainly doesn't look very tasty, does it, that marua? But we roll on with our news agenda here on KTN Weekend Prime. Of course, the top story coming from Paris, France, where the citizens of France and indeed the European Union are reeling from those 6 separate terrorist attacks. We'll try and get Andrew Franklin to give us some analysis on the same, what the implications of those attacks are, both globally and locally here in Kenya. Back in a moment here on KTN Weekend Prime. Of course, the story that we've been following for you all day here on KTN News comes from Paris, France, of course, in Europe, with those 6 separate terrorist attacks, leaving over 120 people dead. Joining us to analyze what the implications may be, both globally and locally, we've got Andrew Franklin, our resident security analyst, joining us from our I&M studios here in Nairobi. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us. Andrew, let's start with what's been going on with respect to the pledges for support against ISIS. Now, the United States, Russia, and a number of other Western states seem to be closing ranks on this. But what are the implications in the short term, do you think, for France, and what are the implications for all of us in this war against terror?
Well, I think we have to look at where ISIS came from. ISIS started to appear on the radar in 2012. It was a somewhat more extreme version of al-Nusra Front, which had been declared a terrorist organization by the United States and other Western countries. ISIS, or Daesh, so-called Islamic State, is seeking to establish a caliphate in Syria and Iraq. The pledges of support for France are all morals, and they're to be expected. France has stepped out against Islamic fundamentalism, especially in Africa. And also France does put boots on the ground and supports its allies in Africa and elsewhere. We should understand that today's attack, this horrendous 6 attacks in Paris on targets against normal or French civilians. Yeah. These are not journalists, these are not Jewish targets. These are civilians. Now, Islamic State believes that the Western countries who are bombing Iraq and Syria, and now the Russians, are killing civilians.
All right, Andrew, what are the implications? What do you think? What do you expect the pronouncements maybe from France as well as other Western states may be? Are we looking at a complete shift in the way ISIS is going to be dealt with both in Syria and around the world?
I would like to think there would be a real shift, but based on what the Secretary of State, John Kerry, spoke about earlier this evening, I don't see it happening. No Western country, no one's going to put boots on the ground. By somehow sitting down in Vienna to discuss what we're going to do about Syria, we're missing the point, which is that Islamic State is full of former members of Saddam Hussein's military organization. It is full of Ba'ath Party members who were all fired, thrown out of the political system after the United States successfully invaded Iraq. Yeah. By talking only of Syria, and we've also excluded al-Nusra and Daesh, Islamic State, from sitting down. When Secretary of State Kerry said we're going to have 2 sides, and we're going to exclude the Al-Qaeda affiliate, and we're going to exclude Islamic State, which is transnational. If you look at how Islamic State is reaching out against its enemies, that is, countries that are supporting its enemies, that is, whether it's President Assad. Yeah. So that hence the bombing in Beirut against Hezbollah, which was is a Shia organization, which is also on a terrorist watch list.
Which leads me, Andrew, to my final question this evening. We saw the Sharm el-Sheikh bombing of that plane, ISIS claiming responsibility for that. Then there's a bombing of the neighborhood in Lebanon, and then now these attacks in Paris. If there's a declaration as an act of war, as Francois Hollande said that it would be, where will this war be fought?
Well, I think we have overlooked the fact that there were 2 attacks in Tunisia, devastating attacks. initially against the museum and then against the beach resorts. There have been attacks in Libya. We now see ISIS has set up its own affiliate in the eastern part of Libya. In other words, ISIS is expanding, but also it is taking action against those countries that are bombing its territory, that are actively working against it.
All right.
I think the implications are that unless we go to the heart of the problem, that is Iraq and Syria, we will never resolve this issue. If we believe that we can bomb them into submission, we're going to see increasing amounts of terrorism. We're going to see more and more attacks throughout Western Europe and also throughout North Africa.
All right.
Islamic State is fighting a conventional war in Iraq and also in Syria.
But an asymmetrical war in different parts of the world, Andrew, that's where we're going to have to leave it
Obviously,
this evening.
ISIS does not have aircraft.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to end it this evening, running short of time, but definitely not short of commentary on this story. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Andrew Franklin, our security analyst, joining us there from our I&M studios, of course, talking about those attacks in Paris and what the implications might be, both symmetrical and asymmetrical war being fought out of Syria and Iraq and in different targets around the world. We'll keep tabs on that story as it develops. Now, this next story may be an interesting one. I'll let you know about this story right after this break here on KTN Weekend Pride. The story that's dominated the news agenda for much of this past week here in Kenya. President Uhuru Kenyatta, during his tour of Western Kenya's Bungoma County, put up a spirited defense of Kenya Defense Forces fighting the Al-Shabaab in Somalia. Uhuru rubbished a recent report by a human rights group which claimed that KDF was involved in smuggling sugar and charcoal from Kismayo into Kenya. The president said the allegations were being pushed by forces bent on fueling animosity against KDF and AMISOM troops in Somalia.
President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto are touring several counties in Western Kenya to inspect and launch development projects. CORD Co-Principal Moses Wetangula, who is also Bungoma Senator, and his Kakamega counterpart Boni Khalwale also joined the president's convoy. The region enjoys overwhelming support from the opposition CORD, but Jubilee is keen to win support in that region. Kakamega Senator Boni Khalwale had asked the president to concentrate on development and stop those in his entourage from playing politics during his tour of Bungoma and Kakamega counties.
Na sisi haja yetu sio siasa. Na mimi kila pahali naenda mimi nasema ya kwamba hatuna serikali mbili ya nchi hii. Serikali ni moja. Tukijamaliza uchaguzi hatuna haja ya kubishana. Serikali itendee kila Mkenya pahali alipo na sio kupagua ulipiga kura wapi au ulichagua nani. Wakenya wote watendewe haki na tuweze kuendelesha taifa letu mbele na kuboresha maisha ya wananchi wa jamhuri yetu ya Kenya.
Hii ni wakati wa kufanya kazi. Tunataka watoto wasome, tunataka mupate umeme katika nyumba yenu, kupatikane stima, tunataka kuwe na maji, barabara ndio hii, tunataka kuweka lami kwa sababu serikali ya Kenya inayoongozwa na Uhuru Kenyatta itatumikia Wakenya wote bila ubaguzi.
The president also visited Kibabii University, where he gave the university a charter. It was while here that the president dismissed a recent report that alleged Kenyan troops in Somalia were collaborating with Al-Shabaab militants in the illegal charcoal and sugar trade in Kismayo.
My friend, they are there serving us. And I'm telling you, my government will support our security forces. We will support our military people who are in Somalia. We encourage them to continue to do the good job.
The president urged the opposition to engage the government in constructive criticism and not name-calling.
We know that we have been critical of your government and we shall continue doing so. But we do so not because we dislike you, you are our president. Every time we say something has not been done right,
we intend to make you do it better. Criticism is good. Hapo unaenda Kombo, unatingisha namna hii, hiyo tutatembea pamoja. Lakini kama ni matusi, unasema sasa hii hainisaidia, haikusaidii. Wacha tu tuangaliane tujue sasa.
Earlier, the president opened the Lwahaha border post that will boost trade and cooperation between Kenya and Uganda. He also launched the upgrading of Lwahaha, Sirisia and Chole Road. Uhuru said the road will increase volume of business in the area once travelers to Uganda and South Sudan start using it on completion. The president also disclosed that he had discussed with Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, who assured him that the road from Mbale on the Uganda side to the Lwahaha border post will be tarmacked to ease cross-border transport. The president spent Saturday night at Kakamega State Lodge, where he engaged local leaders. The president will on Sunday visit Mumias town in Kakamega County to launch water projects before heading North Rift to launch more development projects. Pati Kamimo, KTN News.
Alright, if you want to contribute to our news agenda this evening, the hashtag is Weekend Prime. We're going to a short break right now, but we'll be back with sports news in Eldoret, where Lynn Washira is standing by. Back in a moment. More than 7,000 participants are expected to take part in the 9th edition of the CAS Marathon, where Lynn Washira is, while the organizing committee promises safety and security for the participants. A new winner is expected to be crowned in the marathon, which has over the years acted as a launchpad of careers for many athletes in the country. The marathon will be broadcast live on KTN.
Naweka askari kwa hii starting point karibu askari 10, na tunaendelea, tutaweka katika kila kituo kama Chebarbar tutaweka askari mbili mpaka mahali watamalizia. The owners of the vehicles will be there with us. They'll have to be delayed kidogo on the side, and we have put enough security arrangements for tomorrow.
Sisi kama waandalizi wa mbio za mwaka huu za CAS Marathon tumejiandaa vilivyo. Kesho tunatarajia zaidi ya maelfu ya wanariadha kujumuika katika mahali hapa tumesimama, wakianza mbio za kilomita 42. Polisi wametuahidi kwamba barabara itakuwa shwari kwa wakimbiaji, hatuko watakuwa na magari mingi, kwa sababu tunataka tupewe wanariadha time nzuri wakimbie na hewa safi ambayo tutakuwa na magari mingi kwa barabarani.
The Kenya Basketball Federation regular season entered its final day, where key fixtures took place at the Nyayo National Indoor Gymnasium as a number of teams battled to position themselves for the playoffs. In the Women's League, defending champions USIU narrowly survived Equity Bank's attacks in a match that ended 44-43. Cynthia Irakunda registered 14 points for USIU, while Ashley Kings collected 16 points for the Storms. In another match, Equity edged out Ulinzi 56-53, another closely fought one, with Hilda Luvandwa playing a vital role in the Bankers' victory. 4 top teams in each of the pools battle it out in the playoffs on Sunday. Well, as promised, let's now cross over to Lynn Washira, who's standing by in Eldoret. Lynn, what's the weather like? What are you looking forward to at the CAS Marathon tomorrow?
6,000 customers. And also we have a CAS.
Thank you very much, John and Mamo. And of course, even before we probably let you know where we're coming live to you from, of course, a good day for the Kenya Sevens team, who, of course, won all their matches to qualify for the main cup quarters at the Rio Olympic qualifiers. But while we're coming live to you from Uasin Gishu County, and to be more precise, we're coming to you from Power Place, where we're having a very interesting event. I would say it's a dinner hosted by CAS Media Group, just to honor the sponsors for the 9th edition of the CAS International Marathon that is set to go down tomorrow. And do remember that CAS Marathon will be broadcast live to you on the KTN home channel. And about 8,000 participants are the target for this year. Do remember that this is a race that has nurtured quite a number of athletes who have gone on to become world beaters. And to just name a few, we've had Geoffrey Mutai, Dennis Kineto. And those are just some of the athletes who started or who kicked off their athletic career at the CAS International Marathon. Another important thing to note is that the defending champions from last year's event will not be coming to this year to defend their titles, which means that this year we will definitely be having new winners, and 2015 will crown new CAS International Marathon winners. And here with me I have the CAS Media Group Chairman CK Chepkwon. Of course, he will be telling us more about this event and how it all started. And CK, how did CAS International Marathon start?
I think we started CAS Marathon way back 9 years ago, because we looked around and we didn't see enough competition to give our local athlete exposure to be able to compete on the international scene. And we looked at it and we finally made a decision that we want to develop locally here an event that could be equivalent to London, New York and so forth, and we are in the process of building it up.
And how successful has CAS Marathon been so far?
I think you mentioned it yourself that Jeffrey Mutai was discovered in 2007 and went ahead to be the best marathonian in the world. In fact, there is a book which has been written about him, the quest to break the under 2-hour marathons, and we think that Jeffrey Mutai, who happened, we discovered it through CAS FM.
And finally, CAS Marathon in 5 years?
CAS FM in 5 years, I think it will be, it is 9 years now. So we want to see it to live to 100 to 200 years. I believe even the next generations will come and thrive the same event, and we are committed to it. And we believe that it is one way of telling the story from our country and from this region. It is the right story, and this is how we're telling the story.
Thank you very much, and of course all the very best in future. That is the CAS Media Group Chairman CK Chepkwon talking to us about the success and of course about the strides that the race has made since inception. I do remember that this year the race enters its 9th edition.
With more Team D.
Because I bought Bulletin Power Guard, which kills 100% mosquitoes. Bulletin Power Guard kills 100% mosquitoes.
All right, thank you very much for joining us here on KTN Weekend Prime. Of course, the evening's bulletin dominated by that news coming out of Paris. We'll be following up on that story as the developments come through to us here in Nairobi. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is John Allen Amu. Have a great night. Remember, on KTN Home, the Lotto Show is up next. Good night.